Hello and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be about breast cancer and how to get your checkups, and it's also story time about how my mom passed away from breast cancer. And it's going to be a two-part video because it is going to be kind of long and I didn't want to put everything into one video. So I'm going to split it up into two videos and make sure you guys watch part one and part two of the video. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Welcome back to all my subscribers and anybody that's just tuning in. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. And if you would like to see me when I upload new videos, go ahead and hit the notification bell in the right hand corner. All right, you guys, stay tuned for the video. Alright guys, so I'm going to be doing story time today. This video is about breast cancer. It's about breast cancer awareness, and it's also about my mother and her experience with breast cancer. She is no longer living, but I want to tell you guys just my time with that and my story and my mom's story. A little difficult, you guys, so I might be editing a lot out of this video. So my mom, she was in her early 50s and she had gotten a boil under her arm before. So she just thought that the little mass that was starting under her arm, kind of going into her breast tissue, was just a boil. So she waited and she waited, and eventually the boil never came to a head for it to pop. You know how boils, they get white and then they start to drain. It never did that. So my mom called me and, was asking why hadn't it did it yet. I told her to put a hot towel on it. I told her to try, all these different things to see if it will come to a head. So another 2 weeks goes by, nothing. So I told her to go see a doctor. So she made a doctor's appointment and she went in to her appointment. The doctor said it wasn't a boil and it was a mass, and he wanted to do a biopsy on it. My mom agreed. They did the biopsy and it came back as cancer. So their terms is malignant or benign. So it came back as cancer and they wanted to start treatment. At this point, the cancer was in stage 3. Now, you guys know, once in stage 1, early, stage 2, still early enough, stage 3 is a 50-50, stage 4 is you may not make it. So they wanted to first remove her breast. It was on her right side. They wanted to remove it. And then they wanted to start chemo right away. So they scheduled her for surgery. And you guys, let me just back up a little bit. Before they scheduled her for surgery, the Medicaid that she was on disability, took so long to approve it. So by this time, it's moving along pretty quickly. So they went in, they removed her breast, the entire breast. They did check the other side. There was nothing in it. So they removed her breast and they wanted to start chemo right away. So again, my mom went to the original doctor that they referred her out to for chemotherapy. This lady was mean, rude, and nasty. She did not help my mom. My mom went back and forth with her for 2 months. And I mind you, when you first cut on cancer, it spreads like wildfire. So you have to treat it. You have to treat it right away. So finally, she got another doctor. It got approved through Medicaid, and they started chemotherapy. When she went in for her first appointment, they evaluated her and they said it had moved into stage 4. All the waiting all the stress, all the headache, it had moved into stage 4. My mom was worried. She didn't want to tell any of us, but eventually she did. So I went with her to a lot of her chemo appointments. They did start chemotherapy. They put something in your chest, what's called a port. That's where they distributed the chemotherapy through the port. At first it was okay. You know, she wasn't very sick. She had all of her hair still. And then as it continued, she started to get really sick. She was vomiting. They gave her medication that did not work. She was very weak. She started to lose weight. Her hair fell out. And it started. This was real. Everything has started. And now this is something that we have to deal with. So a couple of the sessions that I sat in with my mom, everything was okay during. They made her very comfortable. She wasn't really in any pain, except when they put the port in. Originally, it hurts. It's very painful. If anybody out there that has cancer knows, or knows a family member that has had cancer, knows that those ports are very painful to put in. And they're very painful to clean them. So they put the port in and they started distributing it. First couple sessions was great. She got sick, still had to keep going. So let's fast forward just a little bit. I would say maybe a month and a half went by. It seems like it was starting to work a little bit, you know, and we were all hopeful. Everything was great. You know, we thought everything was gonna be great. And then we went back in. She had completed all of her chemo, all of it. We did, I don't know how many rounds of chemo. We did all of it. And then after we did all of it, they wanted to start radiation. So initially, the radiation, it wasn't so bad. But if you guys ever been in radiation, it burns the skin. And then it starts looking discolored and all that stuff. Now I'm going to rewind just a little bit. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but this is a part of my experience and my mother's experience. My mother was a very kind woman. She took in a lot of people. She took care of everybody's children. A lot of people in my family. She took care of their children. She moved them in. She tried to help them. That's just the type of woman that she was. And at the time that she got sick, I felt like a lot of people took advantage of her. We were very close. I used to drive her around. She didn't like to drive. And I used to always go over there. We'd have dinner. She'd call me over. We were very close. All of us, me and my little sisters, we were all very close. I did have a younger sister and one older sister that lived out here in Vegas. I was still in California at the time with my mom. My mom was married. I'm not going to say his name, but she was married. And they were together for a very long time, like 17, 18 years they were together. And at this time, my cousin was staying with my mother. My cousin and her 5 kids. They were all staying at my mom's house. Now, we were all very close for the most part. We did a lot of holidays together. Everything was great. And then this person moved down here and all hell broke loose. My mom got extremely sick. I'm fast forwarding now. My mom got extremely sick. And my mom got extremely sick. And she wasn't able to do a lot of stuff for herself. And she needed help. This is a time where you would think the husband would step up. This man is not my father. He doesn't have any children with my mother. He's been around for a very long time. So she got very sick. It was a lot of hospital visits where she couldn't keep anything down. A lot of vomiting, a lot of crying, a lot of agony for her. And through all of that, somehow her cancer went into remission. She was happy. We were all happy. Things were looking up. Things were great. That part of things were great. Until my little sister introduced my mother, me, and my family to one of their friends. At this time, I was managing 3 cities. I'm not going to say the name of the company, but I managed 3 cities, and I had a lot of people that I was training and managing at the time. So I got her a job. I got my little sisters a job. I got everybody a job. Everything was okay at first. And then things started to get weird. The girl that was friends with my sister, the one that I got a job, the one that was at the family barbecues, the one that was always around, she ended up sleeping with my mom's husband. My mom didn't know at first. The cousin that my mom had staying with her was helping my mom's husband cheat. We all ended up finding out one day because my little sister and one of my other cousins lived in the same apartment building as her, and they ended up seeing my mom's husband's truck parked by her house. They watched, they saw them get in, they saw what they did, they saw them pull off, and they watched them come back. That's how we all found out. My mom still didn't know. We all kept it away from her because we didn't want her to get sicker because she went into remission. And as you guys all know, cancer can spread with stress. So we didn't tell her. We all kept quiet. So now my mom's better. Things are looking on the up and up, but my mom started to get suspicious. Weird phone calls, weird texts, hiding the phone, the usual stuff. So she started asking us questions. I didn't tell her, but eventually she found out. When she found out, the reaction wasn't the reaction that we all thought it was going to be. I remember this one night I asked to use my mom's husband's phone, and I really had to use the phone, and the phone kept beeping. So I looked to see who it was, and the girl name wasn't what the name that we knew her by, but she kept texting, "Why are you ignoring me? When are we going to see each other?" She was texting sexual things that I'm not even going to say. I kept it quiet still, but I did tell my little sisters. At the time, one was just turned 18 and the other one was going on 20. Those are the 2 youngest. My mom had 5 girls and 1 boy. I'm the second oldest. I have 1 sister that's older than me. The rest of them are under me. My brother is 3rd to the youngest. My brother is incarcerated. Just keep that in mind, guys. You're gonna need that. So my mom found out. She confronted her husband, and he basically told her, "Yeah, I want to be with her. I don't want to be with you." And he packed up his things and he moved out of the house. Now my mom had a nice, big, beautiful house, fully furnished. And he moved out, I'll never forget it. He moved out 2 days before Valentine's Day. My mom's heart was broken into a million pieces. Right after that, my cousin, after we found out who was helping him, she moved out. Now my mom is sick. She doesn't make enough to pay the bills by herself. So she had to move. So we started to help her pack up the house. I offered her to come stay with me. Another one of my sisters offered her to come stay with her. She didn't want to do it. I think she wanted to be alone. Now, my mom was in and out of the hospital during this process. So my cousin, she left all of her things there. So as we're packing, and she's not a very clean person. My mom is very clean, but my cousin was very nasty. She left all of her things. We had to clear the house out. So we helped, me and my little sister and my best friend at the time, we helped her move the things out, and one of my other little cousins. We helped her move the things out. So I guess they were upset that we moved those things out, and they wanted to fight. They didn't want to fight me. They wanted to fight my sick mom. They didn't want to fight anybody, just my sick mom. So she pulls up while her stuff is in the driveway, and she's yelling at my mother. My mother is sick. She's weak. Had my mother been at her best, they wouldn't have yelled at her. My mom is a very strong woman. My mom looks very sad. I got very angry. My cousin got very angry. We didn't end up fighting that day, but eventually we all did. So, long story short, nobody fought that day. She talked a lot of crap. We got her to leave. She took as much as she could. The rest of it went into the garbage can where it belonged. So right after that, my mom had to leave the house. All her things went into storage. And she didn't have anywhere to go. She refused to stay with any of us. So she went into a room. That bothered me. I didn't want my mom in a room. But at the time, I was dealing with a lunatic, and I understood why she didn't want to stay with me. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, check out my domestic violence video. I speak about this person in that video. So at this time, me and this person, we weren't together toward the end when my mom got really sick, because again, he cheated and I broke it off with him. So, but he was still coming over, He was still coming over to the house, so my mom didn't want to come. My little sister had just got an apartment. She offered her, but she didn't want to stay with my little sister because she had a boyfriend and she didn't like her boyfriend. So my mom didn't want to come. My mom went between weeklies. We would call her a lot of times. We didn't know where she was. And I remember we were looking for her for 7 days. I called every hospital, every room. I called everything. I couldn't find her. So one day my cousin called me and he said, "Your mom is in the hospital. You need to get down here." I said, "I've been looking for her." You know, I called that hospital and they said, "I know," she didn't want them to tell anybody that she was there. Now, I saw my mom a week prior. For the most part, she looked more normal. So let me just rewind a little bit, you guys. I want to give you a little bit of insight. And this is going back to the domestic violence video. Before my mom officially moved out of the house, right before he packed up his things and left, he did some really terrible things to my mother. My mom would be sick, crying, throwing up, and he wouldn't take her to the hospital. He'd snatch the blankets off of her. She would call me. I would get up. I would take her to the hospital. I mean, he jumped on top of her car while they were in it, her and my little sister, and broke out the front windshield. You can't do that, even with a person without cancer. But with a person with cancer, you definitely can't. And he broke out her front windshield. The police were called. They did nothing. And then this one time, my mom called me crying. So I rushed over because I lived right around the corner. In my car, it was about a 3 to 5 minute drive. Walking, it was about 20 minutes. So I got over there. When I pulled up, he had a crowbar in his hand and he was chasing my sick mother down the street, trying to hit her in the head with a crowbar. And he was an alcoholic. So I got in front of my mom and he's swinging it at me now. He's swinging it. I'm moving back. I'm moving back. I'm moving back. He's missing my face, missing my face. So eventually the neighbor comes out and grabs him and the crowbar. These are things that she was dealing with as well. And she did not deserve that. She didn't. No woman deserves that. So now let's fast forward. So the hospital. My cousin calls me. I could hear it in his voice. It was bad. I could hear it. So I get to the hospital. I'm already sad. I'm crying in the car. I get to the hospital. It was me and my little sister and one of my cousins. I go up to the room and I open the door and I look at my mom. Her neck was swollen with fluid. Her eyes were swollen. Every part of her was swollen. I didn't even recognize her. And I didn't know what happened. How did that happen that fast? So I pulled the nurse to the side and I was speaking with her and she said, I'm sorry, you have to ask your mother. I can't tell you anything. She doesn't want me to tell you anything. And this woman, I actually knew her. She was friends with my mom years ago. And she wouldn't tell me. So I went back in the room and my mom was laying there and I said, Mommy, I've been looking for you. And she said, I know. And I said, why didn't you want us to know where you were? She said, I didn't want you to worry. I said, worry about what? And she just got silent. And I said, what's wrong? What aren't you telling me? And she still would not tell me, you guys. She would not tell me. But she did tell my aunt. So my aunt didn't tell me that day either. And it worried me to death. I was crying. And I remember, let me just say this before I go back into the story. Chemotherapy is treatment. It is a way to treat cancer. It's a way to put it into remission. But the side effects from the chemotherapy can kill you. It lowers your immune system to where you're unable to fight off any infection. My mom kept getting infections. The infection got into her bloodstream 2 times and they hospitalized her. And they were able to get the infection out of her bloodstream. And I remember this one time she was in the hospital. She was in a long stay facility. And I went and she was sweating. And I went to school for nursing, so I know signs of things. And I touched her head and she was burning up. And the people in there just paid her no attention. Like, her fever was so high she could have had a seizure. And I said, you guys don't notice that she's sweating and she's lethargic? So they took her temperature. They said, oh my gosh, she's burning up. So they put ice under her arms and all of her hot areas in between her legs. She eventually cooled down. And they gave her some medication to bring the fever down. And they had put her on stronger antibiotics. So she was in there for like 6 weeks. She got well enough to go home. And then that's when all of that stuff happened with the other woman and all that stuff. So now let's go back to me talking to my aunt. So, you know, my aunt can't keep secrets. And I was very stressed out. I was still, dealing with my own stuff. At that time, I had 4 kids. My daughter was very young. She was like 1.5, my little girl. And my aunt finally told me, she said, your mom is very sick. She said the cancer spread throughout her whole body. And she said that the doctor is giving her no more than 2 weeks to live. So I started crying. And then I went to the car and I just cried and I prayed and I cried and I prayed. Now, they moved my mom to another hospital. She was there before she went into hospice care. My mama had a conversation with the doctor about a DNR, which is a do not resuscitate order. She didn't want to be resuscitated. She said, if I'm in that much pain, let me die. And I always remember that about her. I always remember that. And I remember she told me that she never wanted to be cremated. I always remember that. So she was at the hospital. She stayed there for a little while before she went on into hospice. Now, initially, hospice care was supposed to be done at my little sister's house. But my mom's husband, he still had rights over her because they're still legally married. He was very nasty. He had no compassion for my mother or any of us. I remember this one time, he didn't know I was at the hospital, and I just watched him through the door. He was being very rough with her arms. He was saying, my mom was saying, you know, I want to go, and my little sister, I won't mention her name, but, you know, I want to go do hospice care at her house. And he said no, because he was afraid of my sister's boyfriend. So he didn't want to go there. And he said, you're my wife. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to send you to a convalescent home and nobody will ever be able to see you. And then I came in and he just be quiet. He didn't know how much of it I heard, but I heard everything. So I spoke to my other aunt and we eventually agreed that hospice care would be done at my other aunt's house. Now, at this time, my car had got taken right before my mom went like missing. She was in a short stay hospital, and I had to bring her some medication from the house and some food because the hospital food was gross. So my tags had expired. They pulled me over. They took my car. So now I'm without a car. And where the hospice care was done at, it's impossible to get there without a car. So that was one dilemma. So they moved my mom out of the hospital and she went in to live with my aunt. They set up hospice care there. They did have a nurse that came in once a week, sometimes twice. She was okay at first. She was still lucid. She was able to talk. She was still very weak, but she was still able to talk. And I remember we took these pictures. I'll probably insert the pictures into the video. Maybe, I don't know. But we took this picture, me and my sisters. Not all of us, just the three older ones. Me, my younger sister, and then my older sister over me. We took a picture with her. And that's before she went into a coma. So we took the picture. She did good. She did good for a while. A couple days later, after we took that picture, I called. I had to find rides to go see her. I came as often as I could. I tried to come every day. And she kept saying, you know, I'm having a hard time breathing. And I had already known that the cancer had spread, and the infection is what killed my mom, not the cancer. The cancer would have, but the infection from the chemotherapy is what killed her. So there was fluid building in her lungs that was making her hard to breathe. And I started to notice that when I came over, she would go into these blank stares. And I would go like this. And I could tell that she was leaving. I could feel it. And her husband, hospice care is at my aunt's house now, her sister, her husband was there. She wanted him there. We asked him to pretend to care during her last days. We asked him to pretend to care for the woman that he's been with for that long, for her last days. Now, before I get into that part of the video, I want to rewind just a little bit. The cousin that my mom had staying with her, this was right after everybody found out what was going on, and right before everybody moved and left my mom hanging. Here comes the fight. So my little sisters had their own apartment with one of my cousins, with two of my cousins. They lived about 10 minutes from me in the car. I stayed in the house. And my mom's house was in a car 5 minutes from me. My mom was in the hospital at this time, but her husband was still currently occupying the house with my cousin and 5 of her children. We all found out what was going on. A car full of them, my cousins, the girl that he was sleeping with, and one of my cousin's friends, they went over to my little sister's apartment, banged on the door, throwing chicken, mashed potatoes at the door, being belligerent, told them to come outside. They wanted to fight. So they did. My little sister came outside. My cousin came outside, but my cousin ended up walking down the street because she didn't want to get put out of her apartment. So she left my little sister there. So one of my cousins got in her face and pushed her. My little sister is very quiet. She's very sweet. She has a soft spirit. But if you push her, she will fight you. So she pushed her. They got into a fight. My other cousin tried to jump her, and she beat up both of them. They picked her up off the ground. They took her to the car. Now, the one that my mom's husband was actually sleeping with did nothing, of course, because she's a coward. She did nothing. During this time that my mom was receiving hospice care, let's rewind a little bit. When my mom was still at the hospital before she went on hospice care, this girl was calling my mom, playing on her phone, harassing her, cursing her out. She was cursing her out. She was doing the most, you guys. So my mom told us about it, and we were furious. We knew what a girl apartment was. We went to the apartment because my little sisters was still staying in that same apartment. So we waited and we waited and we waited, and she would never come out. So one particular day, my sister and her boyfriend was there, and they caught her. So she tells her to come outside. She wants to talk. This girl is big, you guys, like big. I have nothing against big people, but she was huge. My little sister is smaller than me. So she wouldn't come outside. So she finally had the balls to come down the stairs. My sister's boyfriend spit sunflower seeds straight out of his mouth into her face. And my sister wanted to fight her. She said, "I want to fight you. Come downstairs." She ran in the house, locked the door. That's how much of a coward she is. Now let's fast forward. Another particular day, my mom was starting to lose consciousness. I told you she used to go into blank stares. She used to go into blank stares, and she started to lose consciousness. And I remember her eyes was closed. And her husband, this is what made us really fall out really hard. And I was contemplating doing some terrible things to him, and I had to pray about it. But her husband was saying we had to make an appointment to come and see my mother. Her grandkids, we couldn't come anymore. It was out of the question. I didn't listen to any of it. I came anyway, and I told him if he had a problem with it, then call the police. He said that he was going to throw my mom into a nursing home, and he would keep her away from all of us. So things got loud. I was going to hit him. And a tear while her eyes was closed, came rolling down. And I just be quiet. And I walked out of the room. I knew that she could still hear. I knew that she could still hear. The last thing to go is your hearing. So I knew that she could still hear. Excuse me. So, she is still here. So I just walked out of the room. From that day forward, I bit my tongue until the very day that we buried her. You guys, I'm going to do a part 2 to this video. This video is getting very long. I'm doing a part 2. I'm going to post them one after the next. Please watch part 2, and I will give you the other half of my mom's story and advice and things like that in the part 2 of this video, you guys.